Hi, Stanislav is, I think, pronounced good
Yeah,
or
yeah.
perfect.
Stas short.
Yeah, but how your parents call you?
Stas. Yeah, but
Stas?
the long version, yeah, Stanislav. Yeah.
Stanislav. Um, what was your first computer?
Ooh, I actually not that geeky. I don't know what kind of computer that was. I remember it was 2005.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a computer for a long time, only when I turned 15. And I used it mostly for Need for Speed
Uh-huh.
and Heroes of Might and Magic.
Heroes of?
Yeah, it's an old game from I think 90s. It's
Mhm.
still quite popular in China and Slavic countries. Um, but yeah, and then I started to do some programming, but I started from Hush Hush C Sharp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and only then switched to Java.
But I think Need for Speed. No, Have a Nice Day. It was another racing game which was very old. Have a Nice Day, I think, was the name.
I
I
don't know
thought this
about
is
that.
Need for Speed, and I think it was available forever. Have a nice day. I think. I don't know. Maybe I'm hallucinating right now, but yeah. And and you started with C sharp right away. Why with C sharp? Why you started programming? If
Uh,
gaming went worked so well for you.
um, I I don't know. I think it was accidental. I haven't heard by that time about Java. Um, I would assume it was popular in universities, maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
Before that, I only knew Pascal. Um,
Okay, then how you started with Pascal?
we had some lessons in the school.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
And you enjoyed that or?
a little. Yeah, yeah, I liked it. Yeah, we had like two of the guys from my class. We liked computers and programming, so we started to
Mhm.
hang out and learn some programming. But then it was, I think, a little C++ and then C sharp.
Wow, not bad. So at school, so what you did outside the school with Pascal, with your colleagues, you said you hanged out. So what did you try
Um,
to implement?
Not much because I didn't have a computer myself.
Okay.
So we could only talk and we would do exercises for the school. And only when I got the computer, I bought like a book like this about C sharp.
Uh huh.
It's a huge book. Yeah. Mm, And
Do you
I,
you remember the title?
no, no.
Huh. Java in a Nutshell, I think, was one of the first books I bought
I
about Java.
started with Horseman.
Uh huh.
Was it? No, what's the name? Horseman.
So the author is Horseman, or the
Yeah, yeah.
title.
K Horseman, Core Java. It
Ah,
was
K Horseman.
two.
Okay, I know that guy. This is a nice guy. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The Java guy, K Horseman, of course.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
now lives in Germany and
Oh,
still
really?
writes book. Yeah, yeah. Is still around and he attended Java One and all the conferences, so you can still meet K Horseman. But I thought your C sharp book was interesting because you know um, there were legends around Java book in Germany. There is like Java is also an island, for instance, and very
Yeah,
thick
yeah.
book. And yeah, uh, and you like C sharp, or what was your impression? So
I mean, I didn't have any reference to compare to, so yeah, it's fine. And I think people who switch between Java and C sharp, they also uh,
okay,
doesn't
because
matter as much, I guess.
because my first serious book about programming was actually C++, programming in C++ from Björn Strostrup, I think.
Hmm.
And I read it, and then I bought several editions, and I just liked that without knowing why. Because it was complicated, and I tried to understand the concepts, and then I got the concepts, and I liked that. So, especially operator overloading. So this is why I'm asking, because back then I just liked it. I had no comparison as well.
Hmm.
So I had a little bit basic and tour Pascal as well, but I never read a book, I think, about Pascal. But this was my first, I think, book about programming I ever read. It was the from Björn Strustrup, and I like everything. I remember Edison
Hmm.
Wesley, layout, design, content, and I was actually happy that I could understand something out of the book. This was, my success story. And the Java books were so then I was convinced that Java is the big next thing. So I just enjoyed all the Java books, right? So this is why I'm asking, what was the feeling about C# books? So you just read it to know something. You're very pragmatic and no emotions, or you really like C# or the ideas or Microsoft or I don't know what. It's just
No. I think it was just I liked the programming, the idea of programming, but there was no hard feelings about the programming language itself. And what was your biggest problem when you read your first book? Like, what was the topic that was the most complicated and weird for you?
I didn't know anything actually. So as the very first book, I think it was like Intro into Unix, and I thought a lot about root. So they mentioned root. It's like root. This is like of a tree. It's like this is really strange. Why? And this was for me like science fiction. So why? This is complete strange topic. So I didn't knew why root was called root.
Exactly.
A few years later, I got the concept that root is the root, and this is why this like hierarchical. And they mentioned trees and roots, but I say, okay, tree and root in the operating system. And I had back then, I think Windows 95. And I thought, yeah, Windows is obviously better because there are no roots. It's just, no users and no trees. Like what they are talking about. But I knew it's somehow important. So then I was fascinated by all the names and terminology and stuff like that. I can remember in C#, I think the problem was pointers in general, in my case, because as I started programming with BASIC, there were pick and pokes, and they were, for me, black magic. It's like, what? You know what pick and pokes are? With poke, you can write something to memory. This is like 2 parameters. It's like 65,255. And pick, you can read from memory. And there were some geniuses who could, write something to memory, and you got endless lives in a game. And I say, how they get it? This is like, I have no idea. I had no concept of that. And I was happy that I got the pointers. And if I got the pointers, I could do pointer to a pointer and back. This was just fascinating me, right? And in Java, I like C++, and then I learned about Java. And in Java, I had no idea why interfaces are nice or great or whatever. It's like this is not nice, because in C# there was include H, so the header files, and
C++.
the header, C++, and they are clearly separated. And in Java is like half thing, it's an interface. Yeah, you can do this, but why? So and no operator overloading. But I read about the the ideas, and I said, okay, the idea sounds right, but I never had a problem with C++. So for me, it was like, maybe like C++ for non-programmers was my impression of Java at the very first beginning, right? So this is like something like this. And but the real problems, I always had problems, but I tried to solve them. So I had just problems all the time. So whatever I do, there are problems. So this is, for me, it's just problems. And then you try to find the solution. Pretty cool. But what do you implemented with C#? So what was your first idea? Why you did it?
Of course, it was the first one was a calculator.
Of course, this is actually hard. So because you have evaluate formulas, how you did it? It was like you had to implement a parser?
Actually, it wasn't a calculator. Sorry, it was a game where you have like I think it was 15 squares, and you had a hole, and you could move these squares only into the hole, and then the hole.
Almost like Tetris, but
not Tetris.
But this sounds complicated. It was a visual game.
Yeah, and C# is a desktop thing, so
but this is crazy as a first application. Yeah.
No, I wouldn't say you only you have a grid of buttons, and when you press a button, you find the cell that is free next to it, and you move that there. So it's not that hard. And the idea is you resort it so that all the numbers that started to be random are now sorted.
But you used C# also for something, beyond games, like for business or an application, or was it?
No. I studied it maybe for a year, maybe a little more, and then I decided to go and find some courses on programming instead of doing it myself. And lo and behold, there was Java, and the course it mentioned like J2 SE, Java 2 Standard
Mm-hmm.
Edition, and I'm like, what does this even mean? Like, and I started to Google, and then found some new language for me. So, yeah.
Cool. And which year was it, or
It
what
was
version of Java?
2007, I think. I started
Okay.
with Java 6.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, this was a modern Java, I would say. Annotations,
Yeah,
everything was in
modern,
place.
yeah.
So you never met, the real stuff, like lots of XML files and deployment.
No, there was lots of XML files back then as well.
Okay.
Remember, I think Spring 3.0
okay.
started with the annotations, and it was 2000.
Spring had more XML than Java, I remember. So I was someone asked me to help them, and they said we have really they built a. I couldn't help them because I had no experience with Spring. Also back then, I never did actually Spring, but they asked me to help them, and they building, the oil towers and sea, and they had a Spring, and they say we are lost. We have more XML than Java. I still remember this, and I was like, what's there? It's like just obvious stuff, interface import. I was like, okay, I had no idea, and yeah, and you learned Java because you wanted to work with Java, or what? What's the motivation?
I learned it by accident because this was the course that was in my city at the time. I went there, and
this was an in-person course.
Yeah.
Cool. Uh-huh.
And was my first experience talking to a real programmer. So
it was a nice course, from.
It was okay. Like right now, I would think that I would drop a couple of topics, maybe introduce some other topics. Like this was the first time I was exposed to hash tables. It was very fuzzy to me. For some reason, they decided to include EJB2 in the course. Just a couple of lessons.
But then you got some XML already.
Yeah.
But Java 6, there were EJB3. This is crazy because Java 6 came with EJB3, and EJB3 were actually nice. One annotations and you are done. So actually, this was really, really lightweight. And the interesting story at the beginning was the EJB3 with Java 6. You only needed one annotation. And Spring
was it at the beginning of Java 6? Like together they were released?
Java 6 and Java 6 were 2007 for sure, because I remember 2006 I started with Java 5 because I used NetBeans a lot, and I think NetBeans 5 or 6 they supported also Java 5 and Java 6, and Java 5 and 6 they already had the EJB3, and you could deploy the entire thing in one war. And the funny thing is, because you mentioned Spring and XML, and I could actually there are still conference online where I did it on stage. As you know, at Stateless, and I was basically done. And you didn't even need an interface. You could just go with the Pojo. And what I remember is that the Spring back then said that annotations are not meant for production. This is just dev. This auto-wired is not meant for production. Auto-wired.
Yes. Yeah.
And you have to explicitly configure everything in XML. And I say, this is strange. I mean, I never did it. And with EJBs, and there was actually, we got a lots of projects just because of that, because EJB3 were so lightweight back then. This is actually part of the story. And what I remember, I think then Spring said, okay, maybe auto-wired is for production, whatever, because then they also look almost as lightweight as EJBs back then.
I don't know.
I remember the Java 5, Java 6 days, because there were lots of projects and they wanted to migrate from EJB2, and they asked me what to do, and no one was aware that EJB3 are so simple. So you could delete home interfaces, local interfaces, the deployment descriptor, and you put one annotation on it, and you had basically a class. All public methods were available. You eject the class, and you were done with @inject. And the cool story is, recently I had to migrate to Quarkus. So what we did is we just renamed the @EJB to @inject, and @stateless to request scoped and transactional, and it mostly worked. So this was actually, my clients were happy because there were no big migration in the recent 20 years. So it was actually a huge success story, if you ask me, because my clients told me they focus just on the business. They forgot all the frameworks, funky stuff, and it worked. So you had early experience with EJB2 in EJB3 era, so it was not a good course.
For a couple of lessons, it was certainly EJB2, because you say home interfaces and stuff like that, and I remember these names, but it was very confusing at the time.
And what would happen afterwards? So your first business experience was with Java?
Ha! You would think that. I started to look so I kept learning. So I think it was probably 2006 because I kept learning for some time myself.
Mhm.
I studied Swing. I started to write some nice GUI stuff.
You were good with Swing, with UI? You like that? Or
Quite good, I would say.
okay, cool. So a visual person. Yeah.
Not necessarily now, but right now, if it's visual, it's JavaScript and CSS, etc. But
for me back then,
in
if I did Swing, the button was as big as the frame works. Okay, and then I make it a half smaller, whatever. It was just, I think, the flow layout, the simplest possible layout you can get. If it worked, I was happy. If someone asked me, it looks not nice, I go, who cares? It is a big button, push it, and it's done. Right? This was my attitude back then.
No, I was trying to do very nice interfaces.
Yeah, you see.
Yeah. But then I started to look for jobs, and I couldn't find a Java job. So
really,
the only job that I found was Delphi.
Ah, okay.
Because I was inexperienced, I guess. So yeah. So I worked for almost a year at a Delphi company.
In 2008.
2008, yes.
This is crazy.
Yes.
Because in Germany there was a conference like Delphi, and it was called Entwicklercon. It was like a developer conference. And there were Delphi and Pascal people and Java at the same time. And already in 2005, I think Java was orders of magnitude bigger than Delphi. And what I enjoyed, because there were developers, the famous European Delphi programmers. And I remember one guy who created for Swiss Army some applications. So I spent the time with them, actually. So instead of talking to Java people, I was interested in what they are doing. And we had a nice conversations the entire time. So I learned a little bit about Delphi. But Java in Germany was always bigger than Delphi, actually, as long as there were lots of Java projects, but I was not aware of Delphi projects. And no one asked me about Delphi. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But I like Delphi.
Yeah. I think it was a bad luck for me. But yeah, I started to learn some Delphi again and went to Delphi forums online. And then I would talk to people and say, well, how come people don't write in Java? It's supposed to be very popular. And they would laugh. No, Delphi is much more popular. And so I guess it's because like people who live in a community, they know only things within the community. I knew only Java. They knew only Delphi. So it was a complicated conversation all the time. But I think it was a bad luck. I think Java was a lot more popular back in the day, even in 2008. But I hated my job at the time.
What job was it?
So we were writing some desktop software for lawyers. It was a complicated software, but
in Delphi.
In Delphi, yeah. And the practices that we were reading back then about good programming practices, etc., they were not applied at Delphi. And at that time, to me, I was a very young person at the time, and I think because of that, it was a rejection. Morally, I didn't want to do that, so I was quite bad at my job. And at some point, it was mutual that we should stop working together with that company. And then I found a Java job.
Hey, cool. And you studied computer science?
I wouldn't say studied. I went to, I think it was more application level programming, my university. I didn't pay attention much because I was already employed, and I was concentrating on self-studying rather than the university. And the university, I picked the one that was the easiest rather than most useful, which because now I regret.
Yeah. This is what I also think. If I would study once again, so I would just pay more attention to the details, because back then I couldn't use the knowledge from university, but I could use my Java knowledge in the wild, So this was the difference.
Now I try to restudy all the computer science that I should have studied, and now it's very interesting. And maybe it's like, I don't know what's your take on this, but I think there are two kind of people who, when they study something, there are people who want to start with something that is already usable, and they don't know the basics, the fundamentals, and they start from the top. and then they go down. And then there are people who can start and they're fine with learning the very fundamental things, even though there is no on the screen, that there's nothing useful to it, but they can go from bottom up. And I think that approach is a lot faster to be an expert in the field. And I'm the top to bottom guy.
Top down. So you learned the basics first?
No, I learned the how to, like, I learned enough basics to start writing the software that can do something, and only then I started to dig deeper.
It depends, but what I don't like at all that I know that I have no chance or there will be no time to understand it. For instance, Scala. So I started. I was just curious about Scala, as I implemented some code in Scala, and then I clicked on a Java Scala class and couldn't understand at all what happens. And then I asked, the Scala community, what's up? And they told me, yeah, I'm just application developer, and this is not meant to be understood by application developers. In Scala, they are library developers, and they are develop libraries. Okay, they immediately lost interest. Okay, this is strange. But it's a mix. What I usually do if I have learned something, I read, just read as many books as possible on topic, just for fun. The first book I cannot understand. The second is easier, and then I get the idea because every author describes this a little bit different. Maybe now I would read blogs or whatever. It doesn't have to be a book. But back then I read books. And and if I start working, then I start to implement something. Hello world, very simple stuff, basically. And then I try to grasp the concepts, and I continue, read and do whatever I find about this topic. And then I got a good feeling, get a good feeling, and then I'm still not an expert in the topic, but at least I know what can go wrong, what to do and how to help myself. And then I'm happy. And then from there, if it's an important topic, I proceed with the topic. If it's not that important, then I do something different, right? So, but I think it's a mix of both approaches for me, because sometimes you don't have time to quit everything and start with the app. So you can, proceed your old projects, and you can already learn something new incrementally. So you read about complete different stuff almost for fun, and then you get knowledge in the other topic, and then you can apply it in one point of time. This is more time efficient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I guess from the mathematics, computer science point of view, if you were to spend 4 years maybe studying that subject and then only go and
this would be hard. This was not for me. This is too. I meant. This is maybe too deep, right? Even this is comparable if you would start to Java to start with the bytecode. This is not that level. This is too deep. So, but let's say Java E was like that. So I try. I attended Java 1 conferences. I try to to understand as much as possible about, I think it was Java Professional and J2E then. This was early 2000s, to understand what's going on there. And then read a little bit of specs, never the entire spec, but a little bit, programmed something, read books, attended conferences with like incremental development, incremental understanding. And then projects happened, and I kept learning. And then I got my own opinion. So, okay, actually, we don't need this, and I deleted a lot of stuff, and the essence happened. And this is how I learned, for instance, J2E. And Java was similar, because Java at the beginning, they were applets, but I had no use for applets. For me, was always backend. But I look at that and then started with backends. Then I learned about CGI, what the others are doing. Then Java, what's the difference? It's just just get the context right, I would say.
Mm-hmm. So what about modern days? Why are you so into Quarkus? What does it give to you? And
to Quarkus is very simple. Save money. So Quarkus is the fastest. It starts fast, and most of my projects are in AWS. Some are on Azure, most of them on AWS, where I actually coding most of them right now. 99% are on AWS. And Quarkus starts even a little bit faster than Micronaut. I think there would be no difference. So Micronaut and Quarkus are very fast. And that's all. And if I tell management we use Java to save money, I get the projects, and that's all. And another reason is I have lots of J2E projects. I help my clients with Jakarta, Java, Glassfish, then Payara, JBoss, Whitefly, WebLogic. And the projects were successful, and developers like that. So the projects, if you would see the code, actually I do this from time to time at one conference. I showed what I did 10 years ago on stage and migrated the code to modern Java, for instance. I was delete a little bit, but not much. And recently I was on a conference in Romania, DevTalks. And I remember I delivered a talk, Java user group, about Java 6 back then. It was roughly 2006, 2007. And I found the code. And this year, I also showed to developers, look what we did. And it was actually right. So there were annotations. It was not much to delete, So, and we can migrate the old code to Quarkus with no efforts, for instance.
Mhm.
So if there were, and this is what my clients love, for instance. So there were the continuous support over the years. We just make everything faster and leaner without changing the infrastructure. And my clients focus on business logic. And this is where it shines, I would say. So, yeah. And Quarkus, I mean, so just briefly, I was surprised how Quarkus works because to you, maybe you know Whitefly and JBoss, and I was always in touch with the JBoss and Whitefly developers. I like them and met at conferences and had huge respect because they were really, I don't know, they were like, true hackers and nice people. And I remember back then, I recorded a training for Red Hat about OpenShift and microservices. And they told me, like, we working on something, you will really like it. You have to look at this. And I had no interest because back then Red Hat had Thorntail. This was like small runtimes, and they were not that small. It was a little bit smaller. There was Payara Micro, Thorntail. This was like stripped down application servers, but I was fine with application servers. So these small things, I couldn't get the concepts why I should, save 5 megs of RAM with huge ceremony around. So, okay, this is a huge effort. And actually for my clients, it's a zero added value. And Quarkus happened, and I look at the Quarkus, and I didn't want it first. But then if I saw what happens, like, this is crazy. Because what Quarkus does is it deploys at build time. So it is complete reversal how application server operates. So the application servers like Whitefly, Glassfish, and so forth, you deployed your war.
Yeah.
The application servers read, the contents, read the metadata, read all the stuff. So it means the applications were bigger because they had to have XML parsers, everything on board. And of course, they had to parse, the war. So the entire machinery was complex. And also the wars were supposed to be independent. So the application server was like an operating system. So there will be complex class loader hierarchy. Every class loader, just consume some memory. But in Quarkus, it is completely the reverse. So all the machinery happens at build time, and what Quarkus ships is very simple bytecode, no XML, because all the XML is read at build time. All the annotations, metadata is read, and what Quarkus does, it optimizes the bytecode. So it just generates the bytecode with the metadata. One class loader, it starts crazy fast, and I would argue it cannot be a lot of faster because it is actually maximum reached. And this is why I use Quarkus. So I would say no plumbing, simple code, crazy fast, and standards. So this is like, this is like the killer weapon right now in my projects. If I explain to my clients, we have the projects all the time.
I should take a look because I've never tried it.
You will like it. I think as I know it, so what I saw your presentation. So I think if you look at this, you have to like it. So I think there is hard to criticize the concept. Okay, implementation. So if you look at the implementation, maybe you will find something. I have no idea. But from the concept, it's perfect. And even tree shaking is built in. So if you have lots of beans which are not used, Quarkus won't start them up. And recently, there was a migration from Spring Boot to Quarkus, and I asked developers about their experiences, and they told me it's crazy developer experience in Quarkus. So this is like almost like PHP. So you change something, reload, and this seems like Spring Boot is different. I had really no idea. I never did Spring Boot. But I'm always curious because people ask me, what's my opinion about Spring Boot? I have no idea, so I can only repeat what the others are saying, right? So,
I mean, Spring Boot seems like an overload. People stopped understanding what Spring is because all Spring Boot does is auto configuration.
Okay.
Like you used to define everything explicitly. Now there are some defaults. it looks up some whether classes are in the class path or something like that. And to me, this is a completely useless tool. Like, it was never a big problem for me to start a project. Like, you copy some configs from your old project and you're done. And then Spring Boot hides a lot of this because you have to find all this auto configuration. You don't know how it starts. And it's very hard to debug it because there are so many moving things in the runtime. So every time you want to customize something, you don't like how Spring Boot does this, you want to change it, that's a nightmare. You spend a lot more time debugging this thing than if you didn't take Spring Boot in the first place. Like, just use your Spring MVC if you're into a Spring framework. Use Spring MVC, Spring IOC, and that's it.
But in Quarkus case, what it is, in Quarkus case, the conventions are coming not from Quarkus rather than microprofile. So it was no change, to the application servers, because in microprofile or Java E, the convention was, if there's only one, you don't have to configure it. So if you have one implementation of an interface, you inject the interface and you are done. If there are two implementations of an interface, you get ambiguous dependency error. It was always the same error on all application servers, and Quarkus does the same. The only difference between Quarkus, Payara, and the others is, this is the cool part, because Quarkus reads the metadata at build time, Quarkus, you get the error at build time, not at runtime. This is the cool. So if you run Maven, you get already the error. You don't have even to start Quarkus. And on the other application servers, you get the same error, but you have to start the application server first. So this is why I like Quarkus, because for me it's the 20 years old technology on steroids. So, there's nothing to relearn, absolute standards, and crazy efficient. So for me,
what if the project was quite large, like, I don't know, 200,000 lines of code?
This is not large, no problem.
So it's still fast to start.
Yeah. So I'm actually surprised that this concept works so well that Quarkus is able to build so fast. This is what I will have to invite someone from Quarkus team. Whether they found some limitations, because for my projects it works as good as the other application servers, and you don't have to create a war because Quarkus builds everything. Maybe that's the reason. So there is this one step omitted. So for me, the build of Quarkus was faster. 200,000 lines of code is not that bad, I would say. So it should work. What always the problem, we have lots of Hibernate stuff like that and name queries. So then you spend a lot of time because the queries has to be validated against the database, right? But this is not Quarkus. You have the problem always if you do something at build time and you have to connect to database or something. But if you're interested, you should really look at Quarkus and then take a look at Micronaut, because both have similar concepts, complete different implementation. So the Micronaut uses compiler extensions. I forgot the name. So it found annotations, compiler does something about that. So this is the Micronaut strategy, and Quarkus is like extensions. So there's a build and runtime extension, looks like standard Maven dependency, but this extension prepares the actual dependency. It Quarkifies that, right? So it for instance, Hibernate, it would use at build time the Hibernate XML and generate efficient bytecode. There will be no XML at runtime, for instance. And all my projects right now, I think 90% of my projects right now are serverless. So quick startup times, Lambda is crucial, and Quarkus is perfect. So we have Lambdas with 500 Java classes, no issues, for instance. Very cool. But I'm more interested about you, because what I'm telling you right now, I have to, in every project, I have the same conversation. They ask me, why Quarkus? But what was your first Java project, So you said, or your first Java job after Delphi?
So first Java job was in the entertainment. The
I'm curious the kind of entertainment. This would be interesting to know.
Sports entertainment, like
sports.
Madison Square Garden. They have New York Knicks, etc. And I built a website for New York Knicks.
So you are USA?
No, just.
This is a crazy reference.
Yeah, but that website is not available now, so.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But still, it's a cool reference.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't a complicated project. It was like
servlets.
2 months.
Servlets?
Thing. Yeah, servlets plus Hibernate plus Spring. So yeah, standard stuff.
Yeah, but this is crazy. This is one of the nice to know. So this is NBA, you said, right? NBA or NFL?
New York Knicks, yeah, NBA.
NBA. It's crazy. So yeah, on your LinkedIn profile immediately, I built NBA, content management system.
I'm not very proud of that project list.
If it's no more Derek, who knows? This is like this is like cool, very cool. And you work for NBA then?
It was like we were third party to them, so it was subcontracting. So yeah,
super cool. And then after your NBA experience,
so I worked in the entertainment for maybe a year, and then went straight to banking, the usual career, I guess, for a Java developer. I went to work when the projects were for Barclays Capital first, then UBS, then Raymond James. Started to do CI/CD in 2012. I made a shift from Java development to actually CI/CD engineer. And then,
Jenkins, or what? Jenkins?
So we were heavily on Jenkins. Even had to patch Jenkins and work on the source code a little. We were creating practices within the companies, like the way to standardizing things between teams, how things are built, how things are versioned, how things are deployed. The hardest part is usually the working with Git, like onboarding people on trunk-based development is usually the challenge.
Are you for trunk-based development?
Trying to, as much as possible, use trunk-based development.
Very good. This will be topic maybe of the next episode, because I'm also for it. And in every project, I try to explain why we should not use branches, whatever. You can do whatever, but we will always build everything globally. I had the conversation last week, actually.
Sometimes I don't like, for some use cases, trunk-based development, especially when the database schema is changed, because it's very hard. Like if you make a mistake in your architecture, it's very hard to change the database back and migrate the existing data. So for that thing, I would rather it stays in the branch for some time. We do a proper review, and then only then it goes to the trunk. But most of the time, I would rather prefer trunk-based development. The next challenge was...
By the way, do you ever met Kozuki or Kosuke Kawaguchi? This was the creator of Jenkins?
No.
I had a podcast with him, like how Jenkins happened. So you have to listen. So lots of fun. This is how Hudson and Jenkins happened.
Yeah.
Nice guy.
What was? Did you discuss the drama?
Everything. Yeah, drama and how it happened, and was interesting. It was the episode 143, so it was like 130 episodes back. How Hudson and Jenkins happened with Kosuke.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I met him several times at Java One, and he was like a genius. So a really nice guy. So I had lots of fun at talk with him. Yeah, about that. So pretty cool. So you were in Jenkins CI/CD, various banks with Java, right? So mainly Java. Yeah. And you like Java back then, or what is?
Yeah, I like Java and still like Java. I don't like the new Java, I would say.
Oh, really?
I'd rather code in Java 7. And most of my code, I don't use streams all the time.
That's cool. So next episode will be why Stan loves Java 7, Stan's Java 7 practices. But this will be cool. I can imagine why. Better performance in for loops and stuff like that. So not but rather than you get something out of that, right? If you do this.
Yeah, I like the simplicity. Like everyone knows what a loop is. No matter from which background you are, you know what a loop is. While streams...
this is interesting. Sure. So the next episode has to be about that, because I really like streams and I try to avoid for loops altogether right now. And I think really good experiences. And I also think if I would do everything with for loops, it would be a little bit faster. But I still think it wouldn't matter, because we are fast enough. This is. But I think you are in complete different areas. So this is what I heard in Helsinki as we met the Java user group. So we are different. I'm more in boring enterprise projects, and you are high performance projects. So maybe this is a difference, right?
Not yet that high performance
Okay.
but I'm trying to research more and more stuff into that direction and try to build stuff as fast as possible so that if I need at some point a scale, I don't actually go and do horizontal scaling. I'd rather add some more hardware and keep it all
then
on
you
the
will
same
love
machine.
Quarkus, because usually it doesn't matter in my projects, but there's an interesting anecdote. So one of my clients actually asked me to deliver high scalability with Quarkus workshop. So I prepared, and then during the workshop, and they asked me now, because Quarkus is able to have reactive programming, so with reactivity, and they wanted to actually, I think they wanted to learn reactive programming with Quarkus back then. And I asked them, what's your the service with the highest requirements regarding scalability? And they say, okay, there's a service, and there's like, what's the traffic? They say, okay, peak 2,000 transactions per second. And I say, okay, this is not a lot, because Quarkus out of the box does 15,000 transactions per second. And if you do it right with reactive, roughly 30,000 transactions per second. So I say, okay, you could do the reactive, but we are already now 15 times better than your highest demanding service, and all the other services are less than that. So regarding scalability, you will love Quarkus. And what Quarkus also ships right now with virtual thread support, which I think you like. So there is one annotation run on virtual thread. And if you understand the event loop, and so you can build highly scalable applications. And if you enjoy performance, you have to look at this podcast for episodes with Francesco Nigro. And this guy is performance engineer, and he optimizes Quarkus. But he's also a breakdancer, which is fun, because he's breakdancer and he's just crazy. He built own load generator tool just to have the highest scalable. And remember, he talked at a conference. He registered a talk just because one measurement of a stress test was wrong, and it explained why. So he is the right performance person, and he's obsessed with performance. And we talk now what Quarkus does and so forth. So I think from the scalability perspective, right now it is hard to be better than Quarkus. It is not. I don't need that, because right now all my serverless project is more like one process, one Quarkus. So maybe I will get a project where we have in one project we use Fargate's ECS like container. So there will be multiple threads in one Quarkus, but usually it is not. But for you, if you're interested in it, it is just golden.
Is Francesco?
And Nigro is his name. And I give you the Nigro with E. And for instance, the last episode was 343. Apache Storm, Disruptor, JC Tools, and he is also committed. JC Tools, he commits everywhere with everything performance related.
343.
343. Yeah, you have to listen to all the episodes. It's just 350 hours. So very cool. So Jenkins, and what happened afterwards? So this is actually quite a journey. So banking, by the way, I was not that much with banking. That's interesting. Banking, insurance,
really?
Not that much. Yeah. So banking projects, I think I help a client to migrate to OpenLiberty, his lightweight application server. This was bank and a little bit, but not that much banking and insurance at the beginning in 2000s, and then no more. So what happened after your CI/CD experiences?
So at that time, so it was 2013. A very popular thing was automated QA engineers. And we were doing lots of testing. We had like full-blown pipelines.
Is this like group of people or a company?
It was a company. Yeah, we were building things for American stores usually. But cool. I guess in general in the world, automated QA engineer was very popular, partly because of continuous delivery, partly because of Selenium. We were doing all sorts of testing, of course, but including UI testing with Selenium as well. And I thought that there were a lot of bad things about how automated testing was done in those days. So I switched to actually doing automated QA for almost a year. and I wasn't part of the development team. We were responsible only for testing, and there was a team doing actual software development. It was a complicated experience. I learned a lot about how non-optimal processes work in the teams, and how I would perceive them, how I would change them to be more optimal. But there were one of the big problems when you have a separate teams for AQA and for development is that AQA cannot have a lot of impact on the development, and the opposite, because we're separate teams, even though we work closely together. And developers, I would be in many parts, I would be more experienced in the software development, but they would not take my advice because I was from some other team. But it was a big problem because for a lot of things that we wanted to do efficiently in testing, we were not able to change the code, and the code was not very testable. So from that on, I say to everyone, it's the developer who should write tests, and because then they will see that the way they wrote it, the production code is inefficient for testing, and they would maybe refactor.
Except maybe UI, right? So I think it's a lot of value if you have Playwright and stuff like that, or Cypress, but to have someone who just goes through the UI and sees whether everything is working in non-automated way, right?
Oh yeah, non-automated manual QA is for sure is a very good idea. Yeah,
because otherwise the developer will test what I think is important,
Yeah,
and if you get a user, even after some clicks, they will go complete different path you will never expect, right?
Yeah. Certainly, it's a very different angle of how they look at the app, and they're not just doing testing. These days, it's not a fashionable thing to have manual QA, but I think it's a big mistake because they have a very different perspective at things, and it's just in testing. They also do business analysis. They think about standardizing, in one place on UI you call it this way, but on the other place on UI you call it another way, and you as a developer, you're too lazy to look at both things, but they look at the consistency. They help with the analysis a lot.
Okay, Selenium was rough, right? So lots of logs and
definitely you should, if you do testing on all the levels, it should be a pyramid. You have a lot of low-level tests, and at the top you have very few big tests, so that it's not as painful. So it doesn't matter if it's Selenium or Playwright. Still very.
But Selenium was worse. The cool story is Playwright runs in browser, and Selenium was a network protocol. You could get.
They had. They did communicate with the browser as well. It's a separate thing, but it does communicate with the browser through a separate port.
Pretty cool. Crazy, your experiences. I had a similar experience, but different projects. So that's interesting. And what happened afterwards?
Then, I more and more started to think about science rather than software engineering. I wanted to do something for the humanity, etc. So I started to study biology, and then
you studied biology?
Myself, but by myself, not in actual university. And then eventually I found a job that allowed me to do scientific stuff, work with the chemists and write software for chemists. So I switched to chemistry. And since then, I've been in chemistry for the last almost 11 years. I've been doing scientific projects.
I remember we met at the Java user group Helsinki, and you had a great T-shirt. What was on the T-shirt?
Data Satanist.
Genau, data Satanist. Exactly. This is actually great. So this is how I remember. It was a big impact with the data Satanists. Exactly.
Yeah, if I'm ever in Munich or we cross paths, I can get you a T-shirt.
Very cool. By the way, the Helsinki Java group, it was incredibly well attended. So it was somehow reborn. It's still going strong. You attended another meeting?
No, unfortunately, it happens very rarely. In Helsinki, the idea is that most of the time these groups, they found a company who would sponsor the meetup. but there are not that many Java companies in Helsinki. So there you
That's
go.
interesting because I had a chat with the developers back then, and lots of them were Java developers. And
Yeah, but you were on a concentrated event of Java developers, so
okay, yeah, because I
there
know
are
Java user group is a Java concentrated event, right? So this is
yeah.
and okay, so and now you are working for the same company, right? About
So
for
I started with the outsource, and
Mhm.
now I founded my own company.
What's the name of the
And
company? So
it's called LC.
LC.
Yeah, it's a
What's the website?
elsci.io.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Electronic Sciences LC.
Electronicscience.io. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, .io. So yeah, we built a web and enterprise software for chemists mostly.
Mm-hmm. So elevator pitch. So how people can book you, your company. What's the main use cases and just
So the biggest problem, like not an elevator speech, but the big problem, just so that you understand the scientific world, the big problem in science is that developers don't understand science and they cannot build good software for scientists.
Yeah,
So there is
that's
a
true
disconnect.
for me. Yeah.
There is a disconnect between what scientists need and what software developers think they need, and they cannot communicate properly. Scientists are very bad at explaining what they want, and so scientists dictate UI because like what should be on the UI, like which buttons, because software developers are very bad at understanding science, so they cannot think for themselves. Another problem is that it's a cheap field, so it's very hard to find a good paying job in scientific fields. So it doesn't attract a lot of talent. So all in all, we end up with a very, very slow, very badly designed software in science. Like it's through the whole industry. It's not like in banking, you can hire some top-notch software engineers. They would go do some microsecond stuff. It's very, very badly. So that's why I'm trying to be different, trying to do like high performance, very user friendly stuff. Yeah, trying to be different.
Is it your company? Is it your company?
Yeah.
And how big is it? Or
6 people.
Cool. And you are the boss.
Yeah.
They're the hacking boss. This is very good.
Yeah. I'm not like if I were to give advice to people who want to found a company, don't. Like this is the worst thing for a software engineer.
Absolutely. Really, this is why I'm alone.
Very depressing. Yeah.
This is why I'm freelancer.
Very envious.
Yeah. I so many opportunities. They ask me, if you create a company, you get a contract, and I say, yeah, but I would like, and this was a very good decision because in worst it can happen, I'm out of contract, so I get the vacations, but I have no, I don't have to care about projects and so I'm free actually, and really enjoy it still. So, but I know I'm almost alone. As I started in Germany, so we are lots of consultants back then, and almost anybody else started companies. They are now CEOs, CTOs, and if I met them, it's like, are you happy? And I say, yeah, but the programmer was great, right? So this is like the
In the age of social networks, what you see on the social network is very drastically different from what people actually feel. Like they would tell you about success, but eventually, at the end of the day, they are very depressed most of the time.
Yeah. And what is success? You have to be happy, right? It should be good enough. And then if you learn every day a little bit new, then you will be happier, I would say, than doing just job because your angel investor or whoever decided that this is the right thing to do, right?
Yeah. It's finances, a lot of finances, and also what adds stress is that you're not just responsible for yourself.
Yeah,
exactly. You also have a team.
Yeah. I really enjoyed your presentation in Helsinki, and I asked you then, what are you actually doing? And you said, science. This is actually crazy with Java, and you did virtual threads.
No. You asked me about virtual threads, but I said, I didn't use.
You did threads, right? Threads and memory.
The talk was about how threads actually work underneath on level
Exactly.
of the
This was
operating
deep
system.
dive with, this was a great talk. Exactly. And then I thought about virtual threats and ask you, it's like, no, it's not that far. It was just real threats, how they map to platform threats. Okay, I remember. It was a great talk. Listen, I have to re-invite you back. And the next topic, if you like, would be your company. What you are doing is just interesting. And then we can, from there, branch to whatever. We can talk about CI/CD. By the way, your unit tests, I didn't mention that. I see this complete opposite way. So we can talk 1 hour about the pyramid, actually.
Okay.
Because what I do in projects is I absolute must are end-to-end tests. And unit tests are nice to have. Because what I see, I'm consultant, so lots of task forces. And I never saw a project failing because of no unit tests, but always lack of end-to-end tests, stress tests, performance tests. So this is like, my bad experience, my experience from the real world. And now, where people can find you on the internet? So what's your handle and your company? And I will put to the show notes. So if someone will hire you, or what is the best customer? Who should buy your services?
Ideally, it's a biotech company who wants to be like who likes high quality stuff and who wants their scientists to enjoy their work. Because even if there are software developers within the biotech companies, they still like a lot of them don't have enough of expertise. The people who understand science usually come from science and they become software developers, but they don't have as much experience like working with the databases. Oof.
Yeah. So you will make scientists happier and more productive, right? This is actually
definitely.
Okay, cool.
Definitely.
So if BioNTech listens or whatever, they should hire you, right? Yeah, but not before the next show, because we need some time from you, to talk about important stuff, and then you can, sell your services everywhere. So thank you. What's the name of the company? What's your handle on social media?
It's ELCI, LC. My social is, I don't know. I'm usually in LinkedIn.
What your first and last name?
Stanislav Bashkirtsev. But yeah, it's too long to pronounce, so I'd rather.
But I'll put in the show notes, no problem.
Yeah.
And the name of the company is ELCI, right?
Yeah.
Electronic Science.
Yeah.
And .io.
Yeah.
Perfect. So thank you a lot, and see you next time.
Okay. It was very, very nice chatting with you.
Yeah, I also enjoyed that.
Yeah. They say that every year the number of developers increases in by some factor, maybe by 2 or whatever, and it means that most people that surround you after a couple of 3 or 5 years are the youngsters. So it's sometimes very nice to meet someone from back in the day. Back in the day,
developer. 2-3 years older than the youngsters, so it's just a complete different generation. Thank you a lot.
Yep. Likewise.